Good evening and welcome back to the Africanadian Resource Center. We bring you these updates every day from Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. And tonight, we're bringing you an entire interview that we had with our very own a member of the East African community here in Toronto who is doing a lot of work in the community, working with young people, really trying to sort of go through COVID and connecting people as they usually do within the community. So we're talking to Celestine NEMA, who is with the youths of East Africa. She's been running these organizations with many of the East African young youths for the last 5 years, and you're going to learn about that, of course, but you can also learn more about who she is, what she's doing, what they are planning to do going forward. But also we also talked a little bit about the community, the African community, the state of our community, like as far as mental health is concerned, and all these other things that we all want to sort of look at in terms of how do we move forward as a people, how do we move forward as a society, how do we integrate within the Canadian experience. Those are some of the things we talked about earlier. And so without further ado, let me bring you part one of 3 parts that we're bringing you tonight. All right, so thank you so much, NEMA, for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I absolutely love talking to you. So.
All right. So we like I said, we meant to do, obviously, if it was in a normal time, we would have loved to visit you, and we hope to do that hopefully in the future. But today I just wanted to bring you on to see what you've been up to. I know you are so involved in the community, within the East African community. And so I just wanted to know more about that. But first, let our audience know who is NEMA and what do you do in the community.
Well, my name is Celestine NEMA. I am the president of an organization called the Canadian Youth of East Africa. We are a Toronto-based organization that is focused on mobilizing, mentoring, and motivating East African youth or youth of East African descent here in the city and across the province. And what else about me? I am quite involved in the community. There's a few other things I do. I'm involved in theater. So there's an organization I'm also working on that is doing theater and providing spaces for Black performance artists to be able to sort of like express themselves. So there's that I'm also involved with. And I'm also involved with what is called the Canadian Black Chamber of Commerce. Not fully, but more on the sort of like in the background. But yeah, that's pretty much me.
That's a lot of things you say. See, these days, all I hear when you say anything community oriented, all I want to know is how can I reach you guys? How can I get there? But that's incredible. And I know you and I, when we first met, I believe we were doing your organization was hosting an event for mental health. And,
yes.
And obviously, you know, for us, the RCHC, one of the things that we have set out, that our mission is to build a center for healing for individuals. And so when you look at what we're going through during this time of COVID, and let me start this interview there. How do you think, or how do you see our community dealing with this mentally? How are our community doing during this COVID time?
I think our community, you know, we're a very social community, I would say. I don't know, you've been to one of our events, for example. At least in this African community, we love being around each other, and we love to celebrate things, and we love to spend time together. And so I think when people were separated from each other, there was a little bit of not just an inconvenience, but there was a discomfort that you could feel within the community, because, you know, all of a sudden, like, you know, we couldn't go out to just see friends. We couldn't have the events that we were having before. And so I think the biggest effect that has happened is, you know, we have lost the spaces where we were communing. You know, the spaces where we came together, that almost sort of like disappeared over the past few months because we tended to do this in person. So what I've been trying to do with Youth of East Africa is, it was a little difficult for us to figure out how we would bring in our community back, especially because a lot of our events, like I said, are usually very physical. Like, you know, it's the idea of people meeting in the same space, in the same room. And, you know, it took us some time to sort out how we could engage our audience virtually, because obviously, like, you know, with everything that was happening, we needed to be able to do things virtually. But it took us a few months. Our first event that we were able to do was actually just in August, and we hadn't done anything since about like February. And you can imagine, you know, that's a pretty long time of like, our audience not knowing exactly what's going on. And we also honestly weren't sure, because we kept thinking, okay, maybe the outside is going to eventually open up and we're just going to go back to normal. So let's just wait for that to happen. But it wasn't happening, right? So that's how we ended up deciding to do a virtual event. And what I can say is when we did that virtual event, we could tell that people were like waiting for something like this. They were almost craving like another, like some form of like just human connection, even though it's virtual. Because a lot of us weren't able to do that, especially for some of us who come here as students. You don't have your families here with you. You don't have, you only have your friends, and all of a sudden it's you in your apartment by yourself. And how are you supposed to connect with people? You're just talking to your coworkers when you work during the day virtually as well. And so I think our community now is sort of like learning that, you can actually create these relationships virtually, even if you're not seeing the person in person. I think that's the biggest thing that has come out of this, is being able to see beyond what we're used to.
Okay, and so is there like maybe a setback for people, for members, especially for you and the members in your community or in your organization? Have you seen any setback? Because I feel like for me, not just for our community, by the way, I think this is something that is happening universally, where a lot of people like have been really affected mentally, because it's like, okay, you've been detached from the world. Especially you're saying our community loves to have that idea of what is that hug, what is, that experience.
Yes.
How, on the mental side of things, how do you feel like we're doing compared to the norm?
On the mental side of things, I think we are still struggling. Like I've tried to visit, like for myself on a personal level, I've tried to visit a few friends, but I've not seen as many of my friends that I normally do. I would say maybe like 30-20% of the people that I would have seen over the summer are the people I've seen. That means those connections, and like, yes, like you said, like the physical connection, even just the physical touch of like having someone near you and not being worried that, oh my goodness, am I putting myself at risk by doing that? That's something that's kind of like been taken away from us. And I think as a community that is very social, it has been difficult. It's been difficult for me, and I'm sure it's been difficult for you, and it's been difficult across the globe. But I know for a fact that the fact that we're not able to be in the same space has changed how we communicate with each other. And but it has also, I think it has brought on I think a lot of people have sort of like receded into themselves, right? Where a lot of people would, they would wait for a chance to be outwards and like talk to people when they see people. But now, like, people got so comfortable being alone that, it's interesting, because I think there's definitely obviously sort of like so something quite negative that's come out of this, in the sense that I think, a lot of people maybe are even getting very comfortable with being alone, or they are struggling alone and not actually talking to people because they just
not sharing.
In our community, like a lot of times we don't ask for like someone, like you don't ask for help. You kind of just hope that you're going to be in the vicinity of someone and that person is gonna ask you, oh, how are you doing? And then you're gonna open up. Right. And so not being in spaces where you can be in the vicinity of people so that they can actually like reach out to you in person, I think has been quite detrimental. And I'm not exactly sure, like, how we're going to sort of like remedy that, because I don't know how long we're going to be stuck in this situation. But I do think that that's the sort of like the biggest negative that's come out of that, is people not being able to share because they just don't have a person right there with them that they can talk to and tap to and get a hug from. And get that comfort of being, I have this person that's close to me who's listening to like whatever worries I have. And it really sucks. And also even things like celebrations, like there's a lot of things that have happened where like, people have like, done pretty well for themselves, or like, they've wanted to sort of like want to celebrate with their communities and be able to say, hey, this is something great that has happened in my life and I would love to be able to connect and celebrate. And that's something that's been taken away from people too. I think, we probably, a lot of people probably are not thinking of that as a negative, but when you think about how, how great it feels when you do something fantastic and you're ready to share it with the world, and you know, now you're kind of like just stuck with it. Oh, well, like, you know, it's great, but it's just me. And you know, those endorphins that would usually come with you like being excited are taken away from you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
like, you know,
that's true.
those
And
are the
I think something you say that actually, and I've not thought of, is like, you know, usually when something's going wrong, when we're in a space where someone else is there, you don't have to say it, but somebody can always look at you and say what's wrong, right? And I feel
yeah.
like that I've never thought of it that way, because sometimes for me, I was talking to a friend of mine and I'm like, I'm an introvert, like I'm the top notch introvert, but people will never know that because every time they see me, I'm sort of like out here laughing and
That is
everything. They
very
think this is me overall, but I'm like the truest introvert when it comes to, you know, needing my own space. But even for me, this thing is too much. Even for me,
yeah.
this has become something I'm like, you know what? I like to be alone, but this is beyond measures
It's
as
a
far
lot.
as like, you know, yeah. So I definitely get that. Let me do this. Let's go for a commercial, and I want to come back and talk to you more, a bit more about your organization and what you're doing, and then
Okay.
yeah, so we can do it. Okay.